Did you know that London's public transit system is haunted? That's right, the city's vast underground network is filled with ghosts. And today we're going to take a tour of the most haunted places on the tube. Welcome to the channel. And today we're exploring the spectral side of London's public transit system, the ghosts of the London Underground. Now, London's tube was the very first rapid transit system in the world, and when it first opened in 1863, it was a steam railway, and like all steam railways, it ran on coal. Now, the tunnels that the trains ran through were extremely poorly ventilated, so much so that the air was often thick with coal dust, making it almost impossible to see. This led to many unfortunate accidents, such as the Great Fire of Pudding Street in 1866, where a faulty connection on an electric arc lamp ignited the coal dust, causing a massive explosion. It is believed that the spirits of those who lost their lives in this and other accidents are still present on the network. One of the most active areas for paranormal activity is the old station at Aldwych. During World War II, the station was badly damaged by a bomb, killing 70 people. And many of the workers who died clearing the debris are said to still walk the platform at night. Another station with a tragic history is Paddington. In 1933, a young boy wandered onto the tracks and was hit by an oncoming train. His ghost is said to appear on the platform each Christmas, looking for his mother. But it's not just the stations that are haunted. The trains themselves are also home to a number of ghosts. On the District line, there's the ghost of a woman in white who appears on the carriages, moving from door to door. No one knows who she is or where she's going. But some say she might be the ghost of a former employee who took her own life on the job. And then there's the phantom smell of lavender that's often reported on the Piccadilly line. It's said to be the ghost of a woman who died on the line in the 1940s. If you want to experience the spookiest parts of the tube for yourself, then why not take a ghost tour? There are a number of companies that offer these, including one run by the official London Transport Museum. The deep, dark tunnels of the London Underground are steeped in history, and there is nowhere more deserving of the title haunted than this abandoned platform. And that's why today we're looking at the ghosts of the London Underground. First up is the story of Aldwych Station. This station was opened in 1907 as part of the first phase of the Piccadilly line, and was built as an island site with 2 platforms serving 2 tracks. It had been planned that the line would continue beyond Aldwych, but this never came to fruition, and so it meant that Aldwych became an island site serving just one single track. This led to the closure of one of its platforms, which has remained unused ever since. The station was then closed completely during the Second World War to prevent enemy bombers from using it as a shelter. And then once the war had finished, it was deemed that it wasn't worth reopening, and so it has remained abandoned ever since. Now, plans have been submitted for its redevelopment, but it still remains derelict to this day, making it one of the longest disused stations on the network. And because of this, it's said to be haunted by several ghosts. First up is the spirit of a woman who sits on the platform and watches trains go by. Some say she was a former station mistress who sadly died when the station was bombed during the war, but others say she is the ghost of a young girl who got lost on the platform and fell onto the tracks. Then there's the sound of footsteps that have been heard echoing through the tunnels. Could these be the footsteps of a lost passenger, or could they be the ghost of a soldier who died whilst training in the tunnels? You decide. Now, if you want to see the platform for yourself, well, you're out of luck. Because unlike other abandoned stations such as the equally eerie and fascinating Gospel Oak, Barking, Riverside and Abbey Wood, it's not open to the public and you'll need permission to access it. However, if you do get access, you'll notice that the tiling on the platform has largely survived intact, along with the vintage-style green line that runs along the edge. It really is a fascinating place and one I hope gets redeveloped soon so that everyone can enjoy it. But what about the ghosts? Well, if they are real, I hope they find some peace. Now moving on, we're heading to Bethnal Green. Now this station was opened in 1871 as part of the original East London line and was once a busy stop on the way into Liverpool Street Station, but it was always destined to have a tragic history. And that all came around on March 3, 1943, when the station was targeted in a routine air raid. At around 8:15 p.m., a group of 175 people were sheltering in the station when an air raid siren sounded. They were told to move to the deeper down platform level, which they did, but they were warned not to sit down because that would make them an easier target. But as the sirens continued to blare, many became tired and sat down anyway. And moments later, a bomb hit the platform, causing it to collapse and bury those sheltering underneath 25 feet of earth. Of those 175 people, 62 didn't make it out alive. Now the cause of the tragedy was officially attributed to enemy action, but some believe that it was actually due to the weight of the sleepers themselves. Now a memorial stands outside the station, and each year on the anniversary of the bombing, people pay tribute to those who lost their lives. But it's said that to this day, their spirits still linger around the station. People have reported hearing voices and seeing shadows and figures disappearing around the corners. Could these be the spirits of those who lost their lives here? Well, I like to think so, and hopefully now they've finally found the peace that they deserve. Starting off at 10:20, we have the numerous paranormal sightings and reports at Paddington Station. Now, Paddington bears a rather dark history, and when the station first opened in 1835, it was built over the site of a former workhouse. A workhouse was basically a place where poor people were sent to live. If they were too poor to support themselves, it was basically like prison, but for poverty. The building was demolished in 1899, but some believe its former occupants are still lingering around the station. Some workers have even reported seeing the ghost of an old woman in a Victorian nightgown wandering around the platform. Number 9. The Ghost Train of Highgate Station. Now, Highgate Cemetery is a famous landmark in North London, but it's also home to one of the scariest ghosts on the London Underground. If you take the Northern Line down to the station, you'll notice a strange phenomenon. Every now and then, passengers report hearing the sound of a train arriving, even though no train is there. And when they turn around to look, they see the ghost of a train made up of glowing white mist. They say that this is the ghost of a train that crashed at the station back in 1917. No, 8. The Screaming Woman of Liverpool Street. Liverpool Street is London's second busiest station, but it's also home to one of the most tragic ghosts. Back in 1862, a woman named Elizabeth Delphina Gainsborough was waiting for her lover on the platform. Unfortunately, he never showed up, and she ended up throwing herself in front of an oncoming train. Ever since then, it's said that the station is haunted by the ghost of a woman in 1840s clothing, who can sometimes be seen wandering around the platforms and the tracks. And some people even report hearing her scream in the night. No 7. The Gatekeeper of King's Cross. King's Cross Station gets its fair share of ghostly visitors, and one of the most famous apparitions is that of a gatekeeper who worked at the station back in the 19th century. His name was Robert Smith, and he sadly lost his life after being electrocuted at work. Ever since then, his ghost has been seen wandering around the platforms and even interacting with people. One person even reported their phone ringing despite having it on silent. When they checked the caller ID, it simply said Bobby, which was the gatekeeper's nickname. No. 6. The Derailed Carriage of Clapham Common. Clapham Common is a peaceful station, or at least it should be, but it's actually the site of one of the worst accidents in London Underground history. Back in 1925, a train derailed at the station, causing a carriage to fall into a 30-foot deep hole. Sadly, 11 people lost their lives and many others were injured, and ever since then, the station has been haunted by the screams of the passengers as well as the sound of shattering glass and metal. No. 5. The Phantom Hitchhiker of Hampstead. Hampstead Station is one of the most beautiful stops on the Northern Line, but it's also got its very own ghost story. In 1906, a woman named Florence died after falling onto the tracks. She was only 20 years old and had been waiting for a train to take her to work. Ever since then, people have reported seeing the ghost of a young woman in Edwardian clothing wandering around the platform, and some have even reported seeing her phantom reflection in the windows of the station. No. 4. The Screaming Boy of South Kensington. At South Kensington Station, there is an entire level below the platforms that nobody is allowed to enter. It's known as the Silent Zone because it's completely silent and empty, or so they say. That is because this part of the station used to be used for storing bombs during World War II, and it's said that one worker accidentally set off a bomb, killing 7 people, and now his ghost is said to wander the tunnels, screaming in agony. No. 3. The Lost Lovers of Aldgate. Aldgate Station was badly damaged during the Second World War, but before that it was home to 2 lovers named Elizabeth and William. They met every day at the station as Elizabeth worked as a ticket collector, and William was a news vendor. But sadly, their love story didn't have a happy ending. During the war, the station was bombed and both Elizabeth and William lost their lives. Ever since then, their spirits are said to linger around the station, and people often report hearing the sound of footsteps and whispers on the platforms. No. 2. The Lost Souls of Embankment. Embankment Station takes its name from the nearby River Thames embankment, but it's also taken on a rather dark meaning. You see, the station was built over the site of a former burial ground that dates all the way back to the 16th century. Over the centuries, more than 10,000 people died and were buried here, so it's no surprise that the station is now considered to be one of the most haunted places in London. People often report hearing disembodied voices and the smell of stale waste and decay. And finally, at No. 1, the spookiest station on the London Underground, we have Monument. The Monument Station is the oldest on the network, and it takes its name from a monument erected in 1828 to commemorate the Great Fire of London. But what people aren't realize is that this monument was built over the site of a former church that was destroyed during the fire, and this church had a rather gruesome history. That's because it was built on the site of a former plague cemetery, meaning the station is literally built on top of a graveyard. To make things even creepier, people report hearing the sound of screaming and shouting in the tunnels, as well as feeling a cold breeze when no doors are open. And we finish with a bang because this ghost is not only a regular on the London Underground, but he's also the reason that they had to close down an entire station. So it all went down at around 3 o'clock in the morning back in 1978 when a night shift worker was closing up shop at King's Cross Station. As she was doing her rounds, she started hearing these strange footsteps behind her. Now at first she dismissed them, assuming that it was just some drunk people coming home from a night out. But then the footsteps got closer and closer until she turned around and saw the ghost of a man in Victorian clothing standing directly behind her. Now, obviously, she was absolutely knackered and just wanted to get home, so she tried to ignore him and carry on with her shift. But the ghost wasn't having that. He started to walk with her, keeping pace with her as she made her way around the station, and he even stopped and stared at her when she stopped. After about half an hour of this, the poor woman finally snapped and ran into the control box to get away from him. And when the manageress on duty came to relieve her, she told her about the ghost that had been following her around. Now at first the manageress thought that she was just having a bit of a laugh, like a practical joke or something. But then she started hearing the footsteps too, and she even saw the ghost of the man in the Victorian clothes. It got to the point where they had to close down the station and get rid of all the staff, because it was just too much of a disturbance. And even after all this time, nobody has ever worked a night shift at King's Cross alone again. Now the ghost is never seen during the day, so it's safe to assume that he's just some poor sod who died on the job and now haunts the night shift workers. But the question is, why? Why does he do this? Well, there are two theories. The first one is that he's just lonely and wants a friend to talk to on his shift, which is actually really sweet if true. But the other theory is that he's actually the ghost of the station master from way back when, and he's angry that they've put a Starbucks where his office used to be. And to be honest, that does sound more likely. Anyway, if you want to hear more ghost stories, then do check out the playlist, because it is absolutely spectacular. In fact, I'll even put a couple of links up on screen now. And if you want to support the channel, then buy yourself a t-shirt. You can get 20% off by using the link in the description, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.